Picture this. In a town where everyone knew your name, 10 lives vanished into thin air. A baker who never made a home across the bridge. A boy whose bicycle was left abandoned by the pond. A nun who walked out of her convent and was never seen again. An entire couple swallowed from their home, as if the earth itself conspired to erase them. These weren't strangers in a big city. They were neighbors, sisters, fathers, children. Each disappearance left behind a frozen moment. A half-finished cup of tea, a shoe on the curb, a cigarette still burning by a silo. And yet, the answers never came. The haunting part? Somewhere out there, someone still knows exactly what happened. Were these people taken, or did the town itself hide the truth? Their names remain whispered in candlelight vigils, their families still waiting at empty chairs that may never be filled. What if the scariest part of these cases isn't the people who vanished, but the silence that followed? Before we dive deeper, hit subscribe, like, and share for more unsolved cold cases and chilling mysteries. They were places where everyone thought they knew everyone else's life. Diner booths with chipped formica, church basements where potluck casseroles cooled on paper plates, porches that collected secrets like stormwater. In towns like these, a missing person doesn't stay in a police blotter for long. It becomes the hinge on which ordinary lives swing into paranoia, heroism, and grief. The 10 stories that follow are all different. Different towns, different faces, different seasons, but each shares the same quiet cruelty. A life that should have been accounted for, a file that should have closed, and a truth that will not come to light. Read them for the chill, but stay for what they reveal about fear, love, and the thinness of what we call safety. 1. The Lantern on Miller's Bridge, Evelyn Harrow, age 27. Evelyn Harrow worked nights at the bakery on Main Street. She had a laugh the town still says they can hear in the alleyways on Sunday morning, and a way of folding the wax paper over pastries that made every customer feel noticed. On a late October evening, after closing the shop, Evelyn told her sister she'd walk across Miller's Bridge, a shortcut home along the river that everyone used despite the rusted railings and the old lantern that hadn't been lit in years. Her footsteps disappeared into a fog, so dense the bridge seemed to float. Evelyn's purse was found beneath the lantern the next morning, its strap slashed as if the owner had tried to fight free. A single glove lay folded on the center plank. The bakery's security camera had stopped recording at 11:38 p.m., an unfortunate coincidence, or so the chief said. Search parties combed the embankments and dragged the shallow river. Days bled into weeks as volunteers huddled in the light of pickup trucks, calling Evelyn's name. Someone who lived 2 streets away swore they heard a car engine and a woman's voice that night, muffled and frantic. Another neighbor, an old man who fed pigeons by the bridge, insisted he saw a figure stumbling toward the brush. The investigation produced a couple of suspects, a drifter with a record who admitted to being near the bridge but denied involvement, and a local contractor whose van matched the description of a vehicle spotted the night Evelyn vanished. Both leads fizzled. Fingerprints on the lantern were a mixture of decades of town hands and nothing uniquely Evelyn's or the alleged suspects. The river returned only debris and the pale, flattened lily pads of memory. The town still lights candles at the bridge on October nights. A collage of Evelyn's photos, flower-dusted and smiling, hangs in the bakery window, a constant accusation. Her sister presses folded letters into the chief's hands whenever she sees him. People here deserve answers, she says, voice small and steady. But sometimes answers don't come, only the lantern remains, its glass smoked with old soot and the residue of prayers. 2. The Silence at Whitcomb Pond, Marcus Reed, age 16. Marcus was a high school sophomore with a crooked grin and a gift for making the old men at the bait shop laugh. He lived for afternoons at Whitcomb Pond, where he and his friends would fish and race small model boats, daring each other to push into the marshy reeds. The pond was isolated, trees like a wall, a gravel road that discouraged casual drivers, a place designed to hold secrets. On a summer Friday, Marcus told his mother he was going to the pond to meet friends. He never made it home. His bicycle turned up by the parking pad, tires flat, as if someone had left them deliberately. A single skate mark of mud led from the pad toward the reeds, and then stopped as if the earth had swallowed the boy whole. Search teams found no body, no clothing, no blood. They found a set of footprints, adult-sized, that skirted the water's edge but never crossed it. They found a jacket snagged on a cattail, its zipper half open. Marcus's phone pinged one last time at 8:02 p.m., location pinging back to the edge of the water and then turning off. The prosecution later called the absence of hard physical evidence the case's cruelest ally. Rumors grew like algae on still water. Some whispered about a man who lived in a cabin by the highway and collected stray boys. Others pointed to an older student who bullied Marcus daily and was seen leaving campus early. The sheriff's office followed both angles but lacked proof. Bloodhounds traced a scent to the pond's edge and then off into town, toward the rail yard where freight stopped at night. And then nothing. Years later, a fisherman found a shoe wedged between two rocks downstream, decade-stained, its laces frayed. It was not Marcus's shoe. A friend of Marcus published online messages and photos, keeping the boy's face circulating in digital memory. The town held an annual vigil at Whitcomb Pond, where the sky hangs low and the water keeps its mouth shut. 3. The empty cradle. Sister June Alvarez, age 48. Sister June had been a sanctuary worker and an informal counselor in a hollow church that sat 2 blocks from a mill. She spent her days making phone calls, distributing rice and medicine, and sewing quilts that smelled faintly of lavender. She was the kind of woman who knotted her own apron strings and took down the names of anyone who needed help. One rainy winter, Sister June disappeared. The night before, she had counseled a woman who claimed someone had been following her home. Sister June drove the woman to her street and promised to check in the next morning. Instead, the convent's linen closet sat untouched. Sister June's keys lay on the hallway table. Her shoes were by the sink, as if she'd risen to get water and never returned. The convent surveillance camera, a grainy rectangle that looked out onto the yard, recorded the silhouette of a figure approaching the back gate at 2:13 a.m., then the soft flap of the gate and nothing more. Investigators pursued suspects: a parishioner with a history of stalking, a parish council member implicated in financial irregularities, a drifter who had been sleeping behind the church. Each time, the trail grew colder. Without a body, the legal system limped. The parish's trust eroded, donations slowed. Word spread that Sister June had been working with people she shouldn't have: gamblers, abusers, men who'd been in prison. Some believed her mercy had been paid for with her life. Others refused violence as an explanation, preferring instead that she had left to save someone else. In the years since, letters arrive at the convent, typed anonymous, with details only someone close would know. The letters claim she was taken out of town on a rainy road and held in a farmhouse with whitewashed walls. They say she left graffiti on a wall to mark where she'd been. No graffiti was ever found. The convent's walls hold a different kind of silence now. Women whisper at night and cross themselves faster. 4. The vanishing of Dean Carter, age 39. Dean Carter was the sort of mechanic people trusted with their most treasured old cars. He had oil on his palms and a laugh that sounded like a wrench dropping on the concrete. He lived alone on the edge of town in a trailer that backed onto the scrubland where coyotes howled at midnight. One November afternoon, he went to town to collect payment for work on the mayor's truck. He stopped at the diner for coffee, was seen at the counter, and then, like a sentence clipped mid-thought, he vanished between the diner and his truck. Surveillance footage showed him stepping outside, waving at someone across the street and walking toward his vehicle. The truck was found an hour later with a door ajar and the heater still running. Inside, a thermos, his toolbox, the day's receipts. Outside, one shoe resting on the curb as if Dean had stepped from it and into the air. An initial investigation considered the obvious: a robbery, a dispute, a known argument with a former partner. But nothing matched. The state trooper who led the inquiry noted that the analysis was like reading a map with half the country painted over. No ransom calls came. No claims. A witness who'd watched Dean walk across the lot swore a second small a man had been with him, a man the diner staff could not identify, a man who did not exist in any of their lives. The town's insomnia thickened. People started to lock their doors during the day, to watch the horizon from their porches as if the missing could be conjured back by sight. Dean's sister took to sleeping in the trailer. She left signs on lampposts and handed out flyers at the county fair. Then she found a note pinned under the windshield wiper of her own car, a childish scrawl. 2 words: keep quiet. The paper burned in her hands and in her memory, leaving nothing but the smell. 5. The girl who never came home, Lila Mays, age 22. Lila grew up with wind in her hair and a camera around her neck. She was finishing culinary school and had dreams of opening the kind of diner that smelled like cinnamon and ambition. Her last known evening was at the Harvest Festival, where she danced with a stranger beneath strings of bulbs and tasted the sweetness of cotton candy with a grin that promised more summers. When she didn't return the next morning, the town thought at first she had stayed with friends. When they learned she'd not been seen by anyone after 11:45 p.m., fear shifted into panic. Her car sat in a lot a mile from town, a blank film strip of life. No signs of struggle, no personal items left behind, her camera missing. The festival's parking lot had been full. Too many witnesses, too many stories. Eyewitness accounts were contradicted and compiled until they resembled a collage with edges cut jagged. Detectives developed a suspect, a well-off local contractor with a penchant for late-night parties and a reputation for leaving women embarrassed and empty-handed. He was arrested, then released when his alibi checked out. Surveillance footage from a nearby bar placed him elsewhere. A lover who vanished from Lila's edges the week prior gave half confessions and then refused to speak. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at Lila's mother's house with one photograph inside, a long, shadowed stretch of road and a tire track that didn't match any car in town. The handwriting on the envelope was careful. The police traced the paper's chain of custody to a print shop 2 counties away, and then to nowhere. Lila's mother kept the photograph on the mantel, and sometimes, when the wind moved the curtains just so, she thought she heard her daughter's laugh from inside the dark. 6. The Locker Room Whisper, Officer Tomas Ruiz, age 34. Tomas Ruiz was not supposed to be a headline. He joined the town's small police force because he believed a community officer could mean the difference between justice and neglect. He coached youth soccer and kept the locker room light on late to listen to kids who had no one else to recount their small humiliations and big fears. One night Tomas stopped showing up. His keys were on the patrol desk, his service weapon in his locker, jacket draped over a chair, as if he would return any minute to finish a conversation. The squad car was found idling behind the precinct with the engine warm. Its GPS traced a route out the highway, and then a long, slow circle back to town. Inside the trunk, a duffel bag zipped and full of clothes. Inside Tomas's desk drawer, a letter from a man Tomas had been investigating, a promise and a threat written in shaky capital letters. The department spiraled inward. Some deputies refused to work, saying the job had become haunted. Others doggedly kept following leads. A local judge stalled subpoenas, citing procedural technicalities. Families placed flowers at the station stoop and left small tokens, toys Tomas might have used to make a nervous kid smile. Investigators later pieced together that Tomas had been closing in on a ring of people exploiting teens online and recruiting them to meet in abandoned warehouses. He had been drafting warrants the week he disappeared. Witnesses reported seeing his truck near those warehouses that night. But the warehouses, when searched, were only dust and rats. The sheriff said the case was bureaucratically complicated. To the families, it felt like deliberate obfuscation. Tomas's name became shorthand for the work that had to be done but never was. 7. The house at the end of Sycamore Lane, the Jensen family, Margaret and Paul, ages 62 and 65. On a sun-bleached July morning, Paul and Margaret Jensen didn't collect their mail. They'd been fixtures at Sycamore Lane for 35 years, retired teachers who kept a garden that smelled of thyme and lemon. Their neighbors thought it wrong that the curtains were drawn when the Jensens normally left them wide, welcoming the morning. Police entered the house by the request of a worried neighbor and found a scene arranged like a photograph. The television turned on to a cooking show, a teacup half full by the armchair, a pair of glasses folded on the end table. The bed was unmade, but Paul and Margaret themselves were gone. There were no signs of forced entry. A cellar door, though locked, had mud dragged beneath it as if someone had come and gone through the back. Investigators dredged the Jensens' calls to old friends, calls to the next-door pastor. There were no red flags, no debts, no enemies. A gardener recalled seeing a dark SUV park down the lane on the morning of their disappearance, the kind with tinted windows and an absence of license plate. The family dog was later found walking the neighborhood, thin and disoriented, collar scuffed, but otherwise unharmed. A neighbor swore he heard a woman humming a lullaby in broken English the week prior and thought nothing of it. Others remembered a parcel delivered to the Jensens the day before, an innocuous box from a company that couldn't be traced. The most painful detail was the pile of mail that never got opened. Wedding announcements from distant relatives, coupons, a note from a granddaughter. It was as if the Jensen home were a stage left waiting for its actors to return. Over time, speculation took root that the Jensens had been coerced into leaving, perhaps lured under false pretenses by someone who had studied their routines. Another theory suggested they had been taken for ransom, but if so, demands never arrived. The only audible remnants of them now are the creak of the gate and the garden, wild and unkempt, where tomatoes grow like unasked-for truths. 8. The farmer's daughter, Hannah Cole, age 15. Hannah was the child of a cold sunrise and a warm kitchen, a farmer's daughter who knew how to mend fences and loved to breathe the air before the town woke. She vanished during haying season, stepping out for a cigarette she always smoked in secret behind the silo. The cigarette was found still burning the next day. The ash had not yet fallen. Teenagers in town said they'd seen a truck idling at the edge of the field that evening, an old pickup with a missing hubcap. An older man known for drinking behind the feed store told a reporter he'd watched a figure lift a girl into the truck and leave. He later recanted, saying he was mistaken. Hannah's father battered the soil with a shovel every morning, as if the earth might cough up his child. The sheriff's department followed usual lines of inquiry. Acquaintances, older men with a taste for younger girls, strangers passing through for seasonal work. A man who matched the description of the truck owner fled town the week after the disappearance. He had a criminal record. He vanished like so many possible answers, suddenly, without trace. Years of cold case filings amassed layers of bureaucratic dust. Once in a while, someone would stage a small demonstration, posters flapping in the wind, teenagers chanting Hannah's name like a prayer. The family published a book of photographs, Hannah at 16 and 14 and 12, and sent them to a few constables who still remembered how to look for faces under the moss of time. The case file sat on a clerk shelf, notes stuck like moth wings. Hannah's mother still goes out to the field sometimes at dawn and calls her daughter's name as if it were a song she had to keep practicing. The answer, if there ever is one, will arrive not like a flash of lightning, but like the slow, unwanted truth of weather. 9. The wedding dress at Holloway Station. Rose Everett, age 30. Rose was preparing for a second chance. Her first marriage had been a storm. Between that storm and now, she had taught herself to stand again. She worked as a librarian and had an easy friendship with the town's postman. She had a wedding dress in the closet, delicate cream-colored, that she never wore because she preferred to leave some moments unruined by ceremony. She vanished the day before her wedding rehearsal. Her fiancé found an empty closet and a note taped to the mirror. "I'm sorry. I can't do this right now." The note was in a hand Rose had used before, the same slant and small loop in the Y. She could have left, the town said. People leave and resettle every day. And yet, Rose had left her passport, her money, and her camera. She had left the dress, hung carefully, as if waiting for an invisible hand. Then a volunteer discovered the dress in a storage locker at Holloway Station, folded and wrapped in plastic, with a tear at the hem as if something had dragged across asphalt. There was no direct link to any suspect. The station's security camera had a day blanked out by a technical glitch. A train conductor recalled seeing a pale figure near the platform at dusk, Rose's height, Rose's walk, and a man with a hat. He'd thought at the wind and taken his coffee. The case split the town into camps. Some said Rose had cold feet and left for a new life. Others insisted that a careful, measured woman wouldn't simply vanish. The fiancé relapsed into heartbreak and bitterness, then into a slow, steady sorrow. Rose's sister started an online petition for new DNA testing on the dress. The lab yielded nothing but lint and the ghost of hope. 10. The boy in the orchard, Nathaniel Price, age 11. Nathaniel was the hush of an autumn evening made human, wild-eyed, barefoot, running the rows of the orchard until dusk. His mother called him the king of scraped knees. He loved to climb trees and eavesdrop on adults. When a neighbor delivered a casserole and found Nathaniel missing, the town responded with a ferocity that felt almost holy. The orchard had been a place of neighborly trust, a place where kids raced pigs and adults smoked in tired circles. The search turned up a bicycle with a buckled wheel and a smear of something on the handlebar that could not be identified by color, but was later tested and found unhelpful. Hair from a dog collar turned out to be from a local mongrel. A neighbor's shed contained a hidden toolbox with a torn sleeve and the smell of damp leaves. No human remained. One crucial witness, a teenage boy who stumbled upon a scene in the orchard the night Nathaniel vanished, gave testimony that changed tone. He claimed he saw Nathaniel talking to a man he did not recognize, a man with a limp. The police found a pair of boots with one sole worn in a particular way that matched a man who worked at the Apple Press. That man denied being there. His alibi was thin and then bolstered by friends. He died in an accident years later, and some imagined confession crawled from his lips in the last hour. Others swore he had been a good man who had once given Nathaniel a pie. The orchard is now padlocked. The apple trees still produce a quiet abundance, their fruit heavy and reluctant. Nathaniel's small sneakers sit on a mantel in his family's home like a relic. On holidays, the house fills with faces that ache, with stories recycled the way bread becomes crumbs. The case file is labeled Unsolved, which is a cold and bureaucratic word for a hole that will never be filled. These stories have something in common beyond vanished bodies and silenced phones. They are all a testament to the ripple effect of absence, the way a missing person rearranges a town's geometry until every porch light becomes a question and every backyard fence a possible crossing point. Files remain open, shelves gather dust, and certain people, mothers, sisters, detectives, volunteers, refuse to let the small histories be erased. They become the living memory, a chorus that will not be quiet. When cases like these go cold, something else happens. The town learns to live beside the unknown. It turns its fear into ritual. It pins flyers into every grocery store corkboard like prayer flags, and sometimes those flags fly for decades. New generations grow up knowing the names without the faces. Some youth drink at the same bar where a pair of shoes were found and make crude jokes to sharpen the edge of life. Others study law and become exonerating machines, determined to untie knots the older generation could not. Grief does not parry elegantly. It piles up behind the post office and keeps knocking on the doors that used to belong to laughter. There are procedural reasons why cases go cold. Lack of evidence, loss of witnesses, budget constraints, jurisdictional friction. But there are also human reasons. Fatigue, the temptation to accept comforting falsehoods, the worry that exposure will lead to worse harm. Sometimes the answers sit too close to the flame for anyone to touch without getting burned. In small towns, people dodge their neighbor's gaze rather than cross it. If the person who knows something is your boss, your cousin, or the respected man who buys Sunday coffee, then silence can feel like a survival strategy. Yet even in long silence, there are cracks. A hair found in an attic when a home is sold. A photograph mailed to a desperate mother with a line of postage that can be traced. Old interviews, once dismissed, reread with fresh eyes. New technologies, DNA databases, cell tower triangulation, machine-enhanced image analysis, sometimes turn old paperwork into new points of light. Families learn to be patient by force. Patience as a ritual of hope. Patience as a prophylactic against the cruelty of sudden, ultimate certainty. If there is a single thing these 10 stories insist on, it is that unknowns are not passive. They are alive, moving through back alleys and under starlight, whispering to anyone with the courage to listen. They keep people awake at night not only because they are scary, but because they insist, in their absence, upon being acknowledged. To remember is to resist. To ask is to insist the town belong, finally, to the missing. Years from now, a new detective might leaf through one of these case files and see something everyone else missed. A button that doesn't belong, a strange attestation on a receipt, a repair that never matched the narrative. Or the answer will never come at all, and our nights will be longer for it. Both outcomes are plausible. What matters is how those left behind live with that plausibility, whether they shape their lives around it or let it shape them into narrower beings, hunched and bitter. If you live in a small town, look at the people who cross your street. If you see someone leave without saying goodbye, remember that there are stories that will not end in a tidy paragraph. These mysteries are not entertainment for late nights. They are real lives waiting for justice, for comfort, for the small mercy of a returned name. Because in every small town, there is one absent chair at the table, a space that has not been filled. In some places, the chair remains empty forever, an outline of a person you used to know. In other places, the chair waits because someone is still coming back. The difference between those endings is what keeps us awake. Every file holds a secret. Will you discover it? Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you stay updated with mystery stories that strike a chord. Thanks for watching.